The tried and true formula of guy being invited to a shrine where he meets tons of hot shrine maidens and he has to marry one of them in order to take over the shrine. It's the setup for so many harems, I can't even count them. But it's a tried and true formula. Like, it just kind of works. And sometimes you kind of just want a series like that. It's simple, it's got the setup, and hopefully from there on, it does something fresh with it. And I really do feel like Tying the Knot with the Amagami Sisters is really kind of doing that. It's a series that just has this guy that has a goal, a focus, that he wants to be a doctor, and then he's kind of getting tied up with this whole situation. Pun intended. But I will add that if you are looking for a series to kind of tie you over after losing Yuki from Roshidere last season, we have one of those characters in this series, and I'm already really liking her. With that said, let's just dive into my first impressions of the first 2 episodes. Tying the Knot with an Amagami Sister opens up with Uru, and yes, Uru is somebody that wants to become a doctor, and he's got this place that he can possibly get some lodging from, which is a shrine. Immediately when he arrives there, he hears some girls talking behind a door and realizes, I can't open that door. That would be a trope in your typical harem ecchi anime. I'd open that door and I'd see a bunch of girls that are changing, so he doesn't open that door. No, they open it instead. And he gets a full-on view of the 3 Amagami sisters. Well, after getting a bunch of salt thrown on him, because Yuna, one of the sisters, seems like whenever she gets upset, she throws salt. That's her thing. You have the main tsundere character, and typically it's they punch the main character or something like that. No, this one just throws salt at him because he's evil. Obviously, you do that. Well, following this, they introduce each other, find out that yes, Uru is going to be staying there while he is attending high school because he's trying to shoot for a really good college in order to become a doctor. We get the 3 sisters. We have Yuna, who is the middle sister, and she, again, just doesn't seem like the presence of him, doesn't really like boys, seems like. Asahi, she's the younger one. She really quickly wants him to call her little sister because she's younger than him. You have Yae, who is the older one. She wants to be called big sister and be relied on. And it seems like everything is going fine, but as he finds his new room, very quickly, over a sequence of events, Yuna has to end up finding him accidentally falling on each of the 2 sisters, and eventually she falls asleep herself and finds him on top of her, trying to put a blanket on her. Following all this typical kind of walk-in shenanigans, we get a little sense here of what each individual thinks about things like praying and whatnot. Yes, these being shrine maidens, they are running the shrine, so they believe in prayer. You have people visiting the shrine itself, and they're giving people charms and whatnot. Uru decides that he wants to speak up about the fact that he doesn't believe in prayer. Later on, we'll find out that he had a mother that was really sick. We're assuming at this point that she probably passed away, and it seems like he prayed a lot for her well-being. But unfortunately, that didn't seem to work. That's why it all kind of leads up to him seemingly going to become a doctor because he wants to be able to do things with his own hands. He has a belief that you can't pray for things to happen, you have to do it yourself. That's why he wants to become a doctor. Of course, counter to that, the Amagami sisters believe in prayer. They believe that you can pray for something and some divine being will help them out. This all leads to Yuna losing her tie that's on her hair, which was given to each of these sisters by their mother. They want to pray for it, but Uru decides that he wants to do it himself, go to find it himself. Well, eventually they end up bumping into him, actually doing a prayer, trying to find it. Well, following this whole event, we end up getting the introduction of the grandfather of the family who shows up and explains to them the whole setup that was done without their knowledge. That Yuru was actually sent here in order to choose one of the Amagami sisters to be his wife so that he can then take over the shrine itself, and thus this grandfather can actually retire. And yes, nobody knows about this. So this is a big shock to everybody. You have Asahi, Yuna, and Yae are like, wait, what? And yes, especially Uru, he doesn't like this. One, because he never agreed to have to marry one of these girls, but additionally, he doesn't want to run the shrine. He wants to become a doctor. The old man's like, no, don't worry about it. You know, even if you run the shrine, you can have another job, so you could be your doctor or whatever, that's fine. And Uru says, no, ain't gonna happen. Well, that's when the old man gets a little trickery here, and the idea that, well, that sucks. I was actually gonna recommend you to a really good high school that has a great acceptance rate to one of the biggest colleges out there. And yeah, it kind of sucks that now you can't stay here anymore. So really quickly, Uru's like, okay, yes, I'll accept this. Well, in his head, he's going, well, I'll just do this. I'll get into high school. I'll get good grades. And then hopefully by then, he'll forget this ever happened. Maybe he'll forget that I'm supposed to marry one of them. So this begins their time living together with all the prospects that he is supposed to, marry one of these girls. Going in the second episode, we have your usual, the girls trying to figure out a way to push him out, and that is through trying to force him to do different chores. This includes cooking for them, which he's really good at cooking. They have him do the laundry, which blows up in their face because he's having to handle their underwear, which he really handles very well. He's very so much like, shrug, whatever. Here, where's this pair for this pantsu? Then there's cleaning Yai's room, which her room is an absolute mess. And this all leads to Uru saying, well, goodbye guys, I'm sorry, I can't do this. And that's really the fact that they're having him do so many chores, he doesn't have time to study, and again, his whole focus here, the only reason he's here is to study and go to school. If he can't study, he can't do it. He ends up leaving, going back to his home, which the girls end up following him, being concerned for him, and that's where they discover that his home is actually an orphanage. See, this orphanage is actually focused on taking care of kids who are children of parents who are gravely ill. So if a parent is in the hospital and being taken care of for something, the children stay there instead. The person running the place is Mahiru, and she's a doctor, and that seems to be the person that he's kind of looking up to become a doctor. And this all kind of opens the door to the idea of how each individual see hope for somebody that is ill and trying to take care of people. That, well, yes, Uru doesn't believe in the idea of prayer and making these cranes in order to wish well for somebody that is ill. He kind of sees the other side of it, that if you do the cranes, you end up kind of telling the doctor to work extra hard. And that all leads to Mahiru pushing Uru in the idea of, trying this again, that you can study and take care of the laundry at the same time and do the chores. This is not something that you've ever seen as a challenge. So yes, they all decide, all right, let's all try to make this happen. Let's all go back to the shrine. Let's try to live there, separate the chores. At which point he finds out that, yes, like your perfect waifu characters typically are, they all suck at chores. They're all beautiful, they're all cute, they're all great, but they all suck at cooking, they all suck at laundry, they suck at everything. Don't clip that. Anyways, my thoughts on tying the knot with Amagami Sisters. I'm enjoying this show so far. I think visually it looks good. The character designs are great. The girls are super freaking cute. And yes, I think the setup so far is decent. Now, I will admit that the first episode is not a good first impression for most people, because let's face it, the first episode is let's try to get through as many tropes as possible. You have the walk-in, which is slightly altered in a way that makes you go, oh, so it's a little bit different. It's still a walk-in. You have this whole sequence where he has to be caught on top of every single one of the girls, and it plays it out comedically, but it's still doing that trope. It's doing the idea of him getting a little bit more into their privacy and the idea of doing the laundry. But again, it kind of puts a little spin to it. It's doing all the tropes, and it's not really a good first impression for most people that want something that's fresh. But I will admit, going into the second episode, once you get past all the attempts for them to push him out of the shrine itself, it gets into his past, it gets into what's driving him, and now we're finally starting to get into some kind of getting that meat and potatoes. But I would really kind of argue there was a little bit of that in the first episode as well. We're showing that there's a little bit more to this than you typically get, and based on the fact that we have a 24 episode airing of this particular anime adaptation, I'm assuming that we're going to have a lot more to kind of dig into, and I'm kind of excited for that. And still, what we can get from these first two episodes is getting that chemistry, getting the characters themselves. I will admit, Yuru, early on, didn't really like the guy. It's kind of going for a guy that's very off-puttish. He's not good at communicating. With Mahiru, the one that kind of runs the orphanage, we're getting a sense here that he's never been good at communicating. He's just kind of off-puttish, very cold. But inside there is a person that wants to help people. And I think that was really well expressed with the whole thing with the cranes. The idea in Japan especially is the idea that you make a whole bunch of these folded cranes and you make like this massive drape out of it. And then you hang that up in the hospital room, and that's supposed to be like a goodwill or a wish or prayer to the person to get better. And the way that they're kind of putting it here is that they're all doing that in order to make it as an offering, a prayer for them to get better. Whereas again, Uru doesn't believe in that. He believes in your own work. He ends up getting roped into actually making a whole bunch of them. And the way that he describes it to one of the kids is it's not so much you're doing this for a prayer. If the doctors see this, they will see how much work you put into it, and it'll make them try to take care of your mom or your parent better. So he sees it in more of a grounded, realistic way. Everything is done by your own hands. Humans can't rely on prayer to some unknown being. You have to rely on yourself, what you yourself does. And again, that was kind of the emphasis given in the first episode. The idea of, okay, the ribbon's gone, well, let's pray for it. Well, the prayer is not going to make the ribbon come to you. You got to get out there and look yourself. And it kind of just turns into the same thing. Again, he does end up praying because, again, that's something that he used to actually do. And he kind of does it out of habit. Like, I can't find it, so I'll pray and see if it actually happens. And it sort of does. Of course, how it kind of resolves does sort of possibly get into a little supernatural here. Because at the end of the episode, while they're kind of talking and going back home, you do get a brief shot of somebody on top of some archways. I don't know if it's their mother possibly or somebody else. Gives a little draft to push the ribbon out of this bird nest on top of them. So it has a little bit of a supernatural mix in there despite the fact that Uru seems like somebody that doesn't believe in that stuff. The girls so far mostly is in personality. Again, we get a little bit of a sense of at least the fact that their mother took good care of them and has left them with these ribbons, and they do cherish their mother. But outside of that, most of our introduction for them is in character and slight look about what kind of person they are. Starting things off with Yuna, the middle sister. She is, again, seemingly the poster child tsundere character. The one that seems the most off-puttish, the one that's pushing back just as much as Uru is pushing them. And she's kind of a spitfire, but she's kind of very in the middle there with that nature. She seems very driven in order to take care of this shrine. She seems to be not so much the most responsible, but the one that works the hardest, because you do have the desire for them to make these charms, and she's staying up all night making them. Asahi, which is easily my favorite, she's our Yuki replacement from Roshidere. She is the little sister, little smug-faced gremlin. Like, this girl just wants to be mischievous, and I absolutely love it. She's already, so far, become my favorite character of the show. She wants to cause problems. Immediately, she wants to be called little sister. When he kind of is off-put by her being a little bit too close to him, she's like, what's wrong with you? Why would you not want a cute little sister near you? She's really fun, and yeah, immediately wants to try to find his prawn. Every time she's in his bedroom, she's looking for his magazines and whatnot. Yai is the eldest sister. It early on makes it feel like she's the big sister that wants people to rely on her, and she's really kind of very nurturing, but very quickly we find out this girl's very dysfunctional. She's not very good really anything. Her bedroom is an absolute mess. It turns into a whole bit in the second episode that they want to drive him out of the shrine, so the best way to do that is make him clean her room. And she's in college for art, and apparently her room's a mess. It's full of paints and all this kind of stuff that he somehow managed to clean very quickly. But yeah, she seemed like the type that wants to appear that she's got it all together, but she's the most emotional and she's the most unstable. That's basically the cast there. We also, again, have Mahiru, who is the one that's running the orphanage. She just seems like a lot of fun. Her chemistry with Uru is great because she's similar to Yuna, that she pushes back a lot and she's very aggressive, but she does it in a way that she can get physical with him and say, shut up and handle the situation. I sent you there because I'm tired of taking care of you. She's a mom. She's a spitfire mom, and I really do like her personality. And then we also have one of the childhood friend of Uru who was at the orphanage, and she's like a tomboy that has a little bit more insight into him as a character. And that's pretty much our cast. I've been enjoying it so far. I think it's a good mixture of different personalities that are all kind of coming together to make a good chemistry there that I've been enjoying so far. I will admit that I'm surprised there's not more ecchi in the series. Like, from the very get-go, yes, with the initial walk-in scene, full-on pantsu going on there, but it really hasn't had much since then, which is kind of surprising to me. Besides, again, like accidental falling on characters, but that's not really ecchi, that's just kind of shenanigans. The comedy so far is working. I really enjoy the comedy around Asahi. I think she's really hilarious. They had this whole bit when they first arrive at the orphanage, and you had all the kids outside running up to these three girls, and immediately what the kids do, what do a bunch of dumb little kids do? They immediately start sizing up the girls. And so one of them is like, big chest, and the other kid's going, little chest, big chest, little chest, big chest, little chest. And they just they get a kick out of repeating it. And that's such a kid. Like, that is such a kid thing there. They're just kind of, they found a word, they found something, and they want to keep saying it over and over again. So you have this conversation going on, and these kids just keep yelling out the size of their chest, which is kind of hilarious. And then Yuna's completely left out of it because she's the middle ground. It's been pretty decent. I've been enjoying a lot of the comedies. I've been enjoying the characters. The visuals are decent. I like, despite the fact how off-puttish Uru is as a main character, it seems like he really quickly kind of folds into things just because he wants to kind of get that leverage to get back to his studies, which I think will kind of work for the series going forward. But either way, it's been good. I've been enjoying it. It does rely a bit on the tropes, but I don't think that's kind of hampered it so far. It's been refreshing enough for me, and I'm kind of eager to see what exactly they're going to do over 2 whole cores for this series. Anyhow, that's my thoughts on the series so far. Hope you guys enjoyed this video. As always, if you did, hit that like button down below. Comment, let me know what you think of the series so far if you're going to be checking it out. Additionally, if you're new here, make sure to subscribe before you leave. I'll be doing first impressions of all the shows of the season. Additionally, if you like this content and you want to support the channel more, I have links in the description below. Greatly appreciate what it does. Until next time, y'all take care.